The first time the Galactic Council sent their fleet to Earth, no one knew it was coming. There were whispers in the stars about Earth, a small, insignificant planet far off in the galaxy. It had nothing the Council needed, at least not in the way they needed it. But for some reason, they decided to make their move. The Council was made up of beings that had been around for millennia, beings who had mastered technology, war, and conquest. They had crushed countless civilizations, taking whatever they wanted with ease. They saw themselves as gods among the stars, untouchable, superior in every way. To them, humans were nothing more than a nuisance, primitive creatures who couldn't even travel faster than light. They were the perfect target. The first invasion came quietly. It wasn't brutal at first. The ships arrived in Earth's orbit with soft, almost soothing hums. The Council said it was peaceful observation. But the humans could feel the threat in the air. They knew what was coming. Their governments, divided and weak, did nothing at first. The Council's advanced technology and overwhelming numbers made any attempt at resistance seem hopeless. Earth's military forces were no match for the alien fleets. And so the invaders moved in. The humans watched as their cities were destroyed from the sky, their homes reduced to rubble. Earth's cities, New York, London, Tokyo, once symbols of human progress and pride, now lay in ruins. There were no more screams, just the sound of explosions and fires burning out of control. The aliens did not care. To them, Earth's inhabitants were just another part of the universe to be conquered. The humans were nothing, insignificant in the eyes of beings who had conquered entire star systems. Every human death was just a small part of a larger plan, a plan to strip Earth of its resources and move on. Humanity's spirit, however, refused to break. As the aliens took their hold, there were whispers among the survivors. They spoke of resistance. Small groups of humans began to fight back. They used whatever they had, guns, knives, even old tanks that had been abandoned after the last Great War. The resistance was scattered and disorganized, but it was real. It was alive. The humans, pushed into a corner, were slowly starting to fight back. There were stories of small victories, groups who ambushed alien patrols, or fighters who managed to shoot down a few of the invaders' ships. It wasn't much, but it was a start. Then came the turning point. It started with a small message, a single transmission, a signal that traveled across the stars to the alien fleet. It wasn't a plea for help. It wasn't a surrender. It wasn't even a threat. It was something far more powerful. A human standing on the rubble of a destroyed city speaking directly into the camera. His face was covered in dirt, his clothes torn and ragged, but his eyes burned with something fierce. Something the aliens couldn't understand. He spoke simply. "You came to our world thinking you could break us, but we are still here. We will fight and we will not surrender. Earth is ours, and we will take it back." That was it. The words were short, simple, but they carried the weight of humanity's defiance. The message didn't just inspire the people of Earth. It shocked the invaders. It reached the leaders of the Galactic Council, who had underestimated the humans so thoroughly. They had expected the Earthlings to lie down and accept their fate, just as countless others had done before. But they had underestimated the one thing they could not account for: human spirit. The aliens laughed at first. They saw the message as a desperate, foolish cry from a dying species. They didn't understand what it meant to be human, to fight when the odds were impossible. To the Council, the human spirit was just a myth, a silly story that weak creatures told themselves to feel brave. But it was real, and it was rising. On Earth, the call to arms spread like wildfire. People from every walk of life, from every country, joined the fight. Engineers, farmers, doctors, teachers, everyone who could hold a weapon or build a bomb was now part of the resistance. They may have been broken, scared, and outmatched, but they weren't going to roll over, not without a fight. Humanity had nothing left to lose. The humans didn't have the fancy weapons of the Council. They didn't have ships capable of tearing apart fleets or technologies that could bend space itself. But they had the one thing that the Council could never buy: never replicate, never understand. Grit. The first real battle was a small one, almost insignificant in the grand scheme of things. A group of resistance fighters, armed with nothing more than old rifles and homemade explosives, ambushed an alien supply convoy. The humans didn't care if they died in the process. They fought with everything they had, determined to show the invaders that Earth would never be an easy target. And against all odds, they won. The convoy was destroyed, and though many of the resistance fighters died, they left a message. The Council now knew the humans would not bow down. For the first time, the Council was starting to understand what they were up against. The humans weren't just a planet to be conquered. They were a force to be reckoned with. The invasion had begun, but so had Earth's fight back. The spark had been lit, and from that moment on, nothing would be the same again. The Council was shocked. They had expected Earth's people to crumble beneath their might, to bow down and accept their fate without so much as a whimper. But the humans, they weren't going to let that happen. Across the world, the message had spread. The broadcast from that lone fighter standing on the ruins of a city had sparked something inside every human. It was the fire of defiance, the burning need to protect their home, to fight for their right to exist. The resistance had started small, but now it was growing. Fast. Humanity was not unified at first. Their governments had been weak, divided, uncertain. There were no great armies to stand against the alien invaders. But in the face of destruction, that didn't matter anymore. People who had never picked up a weapon before were now learning how to fight, how to defend what was theirs. Scientists who used to study space were now working on building crude but effective bombs. Farmers who once tilled the land now took up rifles, standing side by side with soldiers who had survived the first wave of attacks. It didn't matter if they were trained or not. They had one thing the aliens could never understand: the will to survive. And survive they did. The first real strike came not from some grand military maneuver, but from an unexpected place. A small group of humans, completely unprepared for battle, no armor, no advanced weapons, ambushed an alien transport convoy. These humans, from a small town in the Midwest, had nothing but homemade explosives and a handful of rifles. They weren't soldiers. They weren't warriors. They were just ordinary people trying to protect what was left of their homes. And yet, they managed to destroy the convoy. The Council, watching from afar, couldn't believe their eyes. A few humans with nothing but crude weapons had just destroyed a highly advanced supply convoy. It shouldn't have been possible. The alien forces had high-tech shields, drones, and weapons capable of annihilating entire cities in seconds. But these humans, with their sheer willpower and unexpected tactics, had torn it apart. The Council's leaders couldn't understand it. How had these weak, insignificant creatures managed to pull off such a feat? Zorvax, the leader of the Council's military fleet, stared at the screen dumbfounded. "How?" he muttered. "How did they do this?" His second-in-command, a towering alien named Varnak, didn't have an answer. "It was supposed to be easy," he growled, frustration creeping into his voice. "Why are they fighting back? This is impossible." But it wasn't impossible. The humans were learning, adapting, and, most importantly, fighting. They had nothing left to lose. Across the world, similar victories began to happen. A group of engineers holed up in a makeshift base managed to create an electromagnetic pulse, EMP, weapon from scavenged parts. They used it to take down a few of the Council's drones, bringing down the almighty aliens' surveillance systems. Then, a group of farmers used their old farm trucks to launch a surprise attack on a Council supply base, using explosives that tore through the alien vehicles. The humans weren't using the same tactics as the Council, but they didn't need to. They were unpredictable, stubborn, and determined to make the aliens regret their invasion. As more and more human groups rose up, the resistance became stronger. The Council's fleet began to take losses. Slowly but surely, the tide was turning. The humans weren't just running and hiding anymore, they were fighting back. And with each small victory, their confidence grew. But the Council didn't give up. They sent in more ships, more soldiers. Their arrogance made them believe that one final, decisive blow would crush the humans, resistance once and for all. Zorvax ordered an all-out assault on the Earth's capital cities, believing that if they destroyed the heart of humanity, the rest would fall in line. They would break them completely. The attack came quickly. Massive alien ships, each one as big as a city, descended from the sky like dark clouds. They rained down destruction, bombing cities, leveling entire blocks with a single blast. Millions of humans died in those first hours of terror, but the rest of the humans didn't flee. They didn't surrender. They fought. In Washington, D.C., a group of soldiers, having lost almost everyone they knew, gathered in the heart of the city. Their weapons were outdated, their ammunition scarce, but they had one thing the Council didn't expect: unity. The humans, despite all they had lost, weren't running anymore. They were standing their ground. A man named Sergeant Ryan, his uniform stained with blood and dirt, stood before the remaining troops. "We've lost so much," he said, his voice steady. "But we still have one thing: our will. They may have the firepower, the ships, and the technology, but we've got something they can't take from us: our fight, our home." Ryan's words resonated with the soldiers. They weren't fighting to win, they were fighting to survive, to send a message that Earth was not theirs to take, and that was exactly what they did. As the alien ships bombed the city, the humans launched one final, desperate counterattack. They hit the alien ships with everything they had left: missiles, grenades, and whatever they could scavenge. It wasn't enough to defeat the aliens, but it was enough to hurt them. Enough to show the Council that Earth would not be an easy target. And in that moment, something changed. The humans realized they could do this. The aliens might be stronger, might have more firepower, but they didn't have what the humans had: heart. The battle raged on, but Earth's resistance was no longer just a group of scattered, desperate fighters. They were an army now, united, determined, and unwilling to back down. The Galactic Council had underestimated the humans, and now they were beginning to regret it. The war was far from over, but Earth had just taken its first real stand, and they were not going to stop fighting. The resistance was no longer just a few small groups fighting back against overwhelming odds. It had become something bigger, something unstoppable. What had begun as isolated acts of defiance was now an organized movement, spreading across the world like wildfire. Humanity, once on the brink of defeat, had found its strength. The Council's fleets, which had once thought Earth to be an easy conquest, were now facing something unexpected: a planet's worth of people who had nothing to lose and everything to fight for. The aliens had believed that destroying Earth's cities would break humanity's spirit. But they had underestimated one thing: humanity's unyielding will to survive. As Earth's resistance grew, the aliens' confidence began to crack. The resistance didn't have the high-tech ships or advanced weapons that the Council had, but they had ingenuity. They had desperation. They had something the Council could never take from them: hope. The humans had learned how to fight back in ways the Council had never expected. On a dark, smoke-filled day, the Resistance launched its boldest attack yet. A small group of human ships, cobbled together from scrap metal and old technology, targeted a fleet of Council warships hovering just outside Earth's atmosphere. The mission seemed impossible. These alien ships were massive, with shields and weaponry far beyond anything the humans could dream of matching. But for the first time, the humans had learned how to use their weakness as strength. They didn't engage in a traditional battle. No, the humans were smarter than that. They had learned the patterns of the Council's ships, how they moved, how they fought, how they thought. And with this knowledge, the Resistance came up with a plan that the Council never saw coming. They would lure the alien ships into the atmosphere, where their advanced technology would be less effective. The humans didn't have sophisticated tracking systems, but they had something else: the element of surprise. With a handful of ships as bait, the Resistance led the Council's fleet into the lower atmosphere, just above Earth's surface. As the alien ships pursued, they began to feel the effects of Earth's gravity, its storms, and its unpredictable weather patterns. And then the humans struck. Using homemade bombs and rudimentary weapons, they attacked the alien ships in ways the Council never expected. The humans didn't fight head-on. They hit the aliens where it hurt the most, weak spots they had learned about through observation. They targeted engines, shields, and control systems, using guerrilla tactics that left the alien ships vulnerable. With every successful strike, the humans gained more confidence, more courage. They were fighting not just for survival, but for the future of their world. It wasn't an easy victory. Many humans died that day, as they always did, but the battle was a turning point. For the first time, the Resistance had successfully disabled a large portion of the alien fleet. The Council's arrogance, their belief that nothing could stand in their way, had been shattered. Zorvax, the military leader of the Galactic Council, was furious. He had watched as his ships, his pride, were torn apart by humans who didn't even have proper weapons. His face twisted in rage as he issued new orders to send everything the Council had left to crush Earth once and for all. They would not allow these puny creatures to continue their defiance. But even as Zorvax's fleet began to assemble for a final assault, there was a sense of doubt among the Council. The damage to their pride had been done. They had underestimated the humans, and now the entire galaxy was watching as their once mighty fleet struggled to defeat a planet they had assumed was no threat. And that was the key to humanity's victory. The humans didn't just fight with their hands, they fought with their hearts. With every alien ship that fell, with every victory, the humans grew stronger. The Resistance was no longer made up of scattered groups of fighters. It was a force to be reckoned with. People who had once feared the invaders now stood tall, shoulder to shoulder, determined to push back. Back on Earth, Sergeant Ryan, the leader of a resistance group, stood on the ruins of a battlefield. His face was grim, marked with the scars of war. The cost had been high, too high for many, but they had done it. They had proven that they could fight back. Ryan gathered his troops for a final push, his voice low but filled with conviction. "We've taken down their ships, we've hit them where it hurts, and we've shown them that they can't just walk over us. But the fight's not over. Not yet. We've got one chance left to make them realize they've made a mistake." In the weeks that followed, the humans pushed the fight to the heart of the alien forces. The Resistance grew stronger with each passing day, as more people joined the fight. Engineers worked tirelessly to improve the human ships, scavenging parts and turning them into formidable weapons. Civilians became soldiers, and soldiers became leaders. Together, they crafted a plan that could change the course of the war. But as they prepared for the final assault, Zorvax and his council leaders were more determined than ever. They couldn't afford to let Earth's resistance continue. It was time for a final strike, a strike that would end the humans' hopes once and for all. The fate of Earth was now on a knife's edge. The humans were not just fighting to survive anymore. They were fighting to take back what was theirs, to make the Council understand that Earth was not some insignificant rock to be conquered. It was a world worth saving, and they would stop at nothing to prove that the human spirit could never be broken. The stage was set for the final confrontation. The battle for Earth was no longer about weapons or ships. It was about something much stronger, the will to survive, and the humans had that in spades. The final assault had begun. Everything had led to this moment. The Council had gathered its full strength, sending its last remaining warships, soldiers, and resources to Earth, determined to wipe out the defiant humans once and for all. They thought this would be easy. They thought that, with their massive fleets and unstoppable weapons, nothing could stand in their way. But they didn't understand one thing: humanity had already won in ways they couldn't see. The humans were no longer afraid. They had fought too hard and lost too much to back down now. The Resistance wasn't just a group of soldiers anymore. It was a symbol. It was a statement to the galaxy that Earth would never be just another conquered world. Earth had found its strength, and it wasn't going to lose it. As Zorvax, the Council's military commander, watched from his flagship, his eyes filled with cold anger. The humans had done the impossible. They had learned how to fight back, and now they had become a force to be reckoned with. Every alien ship that fell, every victory the humans achieved was a blow to his pride and his plans. But this time, he swore, Earth's resistance would be crushed once and for all. The final battle was set to take place above Earth's atmosphere, in a ring of stars and debris that stretched as far as the eye could see. The Council's fleet, a monstrous collection of warships and fighters, moved into position, ready to strike the final blow. They were confident, certain that their overwhelming numbers and technology would be enough to finish what they had started. But the humans were ready. They knew that if they didn't act now, it would all be over. They had only one shot left, one chance to turn the tide. Sergeant Ryan, leading the human resistance, stood at the command center of their makeshift warship, looking at the map of Earth's orbit. His face was tired, worn from months of endless fighting, but his eyes were sharp with determination. This wasn't just another battle. This was the fight for Earth's survival. "Everyone in position," Ryan said, his voice steady despite the weight of the situation. "We've got one chance. If we screw this up, we won't get another." His team of engineers, pilots, and soldiers nodded grimly, understanding the stakes. The humans had no illusions. They weren't fighting a war they could win by strength alone. They didn't have the firepower or advanced technology the Council possessed. But they had something more important: creativity. The humans had learned to adapt, to use their environment and the tools they had to their advantage. And now, they would use their greatest weapon yet, a plan the Council would never see coming. They had learned that the Council's greatest strength, their massive, invincible ships, was also their greatest weakness. The alien ships were designed to fight against known tactics, to dominate with overwhelming force. But they had never fought against a force like humanity. The humans didn't play by the same rules. They didn't fight on the Council's terms. And that would be their advantage. Ryan turned to the communications officer, his voice low but full of conviction. "Tell everyone, we hit them with everything we've got. No retreat, no surrender. This is for Earth." The final assault began. Human ships, small and hastily built, rocketed into the sky, darting around alien ships with all the speed and agility their enemies lacked. The Council's fleets tried to target them, but the humans were fast, too fast. They launched everything they had: missiles, makeshift explosives, even homemade drones that swarmed like angry bees. It wasn't just a battle of weapons. It was a battle of wits, of survival, of defiance. One by one, the humans began to strike. They targeted weak points in the alien ships: the engines, the control systems, the weapons. Anything they could exploit, they did. They didn't aim to destroy the Council's fleet outright. They aimed to cripple it, to cause chaos, to create confusion. It was a war of attrition, where every small victory counted. But the Council fought back with equal fury. Their warships unleashed devastating barrages of energy, cutting down anything in their path. The sky above Earth was lit up with the fire of battle as explosions rocked the galaxy. It was chaos, destruction, but through it all, humanity fought on. Sergeant Ryan's ship took a direct hit. The hull buckled, and alarms screamed through the command deck. Ryan was thrown to the floor, blood staining his uniform, but he didn't stay down. He pushed himself up, his face a mask of fury and determination. "Get us back in the fight," he shouted to his crew, ignoring the pain. "Sir, we've lost the engine," one of his officers yelled. "Then we fight without it," Ryan growled. "They want Earth. They'll have to kill every last one of us to get it." The humans fought with everything they had. Every ship, every soldier, every civilian who had taken up arms threw themselves into the battle. There was no fear now, just a burning, unwavering belief that they could win. Earth was their home, and they would die before they let anyone take it from them. In the heart of the battle, the humans launched their final plan. They had constructed a massive EMP weapon, a last-ditch effort to disable the remaining alien ships and turn the tide of the war. It was a dangerous move. It might work, it might not, but it was the only chance they had. The EMP was launched from Earth's surface, a massive pulse that shot out toward the alien ships. Time seemed to freeze as the pulse expanded, reaching the enemy fleet, and then, with a deafening roar, it struck. The alien ships, one by one, began to flicker and fail. Their weapons went silent, their shields collapsed. The tide had turned. The Council's fleet, once invincible, was now crippled. The humans, battered and bruised, had done the impossible. They had won. The Council's flagship, the massive, vast empire, began to lose power. Zorvax, watching in disbelief, clenched his fists. How could this happen? How could they? His voice faltered as his ship began to fall out of orbit. The humans had won. And in that moment, the Council realized what they had always feared. They had underestimated the strength of humanity. As Earth's resistance fighters watched the alien fleet begin to fall apart, a sense of pride and disbelief washed over them. They had done it. They had fought back. Against all odds, against every expectation, Earth had struck back and won. The Council had been defeated. And Earth's battle for freedom had just begun. The sky above Earth was filled with fire and smoke, a deadly reminder of the battle that had just shaken the very foundations of the Galactic Council. The humans, once powerless against the mighty alien fleets, had now turned the tables. The Council's grand warships were no longer the unstoppable force they had once been. The once imposing vast empire, the flagship of the Council's power, drifted, crippled, and silent as a result of the humans' relentless defiance. For the first time since the invasion began, Zorvax, the military leader of the Council, stood alone in his command center. His cold, calculating eyes watched as the alien fleet, which had once been a symbol of terror across the galaxy, now broke apart before him. The humans had done what no one had believed possible. They had beaten the Council. They had shown that even the mightiest of empires could be shattered by those who refused to be broken. But Zorvax refused to acknowledge defeat. His pride, as much as his fear, would not allow it. His fleet was falling, yes, but he was not one to give up so easily. He had been raised to believe in the superiority of his species, in the power of the Council, and that belief had always been unshakable, until now. He slammed his fist onto the control panel in front of him, sending a cascade of red lights flashing around the room. No, this is not how it ends. His voice, usually calm and measured, now carried the bitter edge of defeat. His second-in-command, Varnak, stood beside him, his alien face twisted with confusion and anger. "What do we do now, sir? The humans have." "Shut up, Varnak," Zorvax snapped. "We're not finished yet. I'll show them that we are not so easily beaten." But even Zorvax knew the truth deep down. The humans had proven that they were more than just a nuisance. They had broken the Council's pride, and now the entire galaxy was watching. The news of Earth's victory spread like wildfire through Council-controlled space. It was everywhere, on every screen, in every city, in every corner of the galaxy. The humans had shown the universe something the Council had never expected, that even the smallest, most insignificant species could rise up and fight back against the might of an empire. On Earth, the mood was a mix of celebration and disbelief. It had been a long, hard fight. The scars of the battle were all around them, cities that had been reduced to rubble, families torn apart, and countless lives lost. But for the first time, humanity had a reason to hope. The invaders had been defeated, and the once helpless planet had now become a symbol of resistance. Sergeant Ryan stood with his soldiers in what was left of Washington, D.C., looking at the distant smoke rising from the ruins. His face was grim, worn from months of war, but there was something else there now, something like pride. The battle had been brutal and the cost had been high, but they had done the impossible. They had won. Ryan's voice was low but firm as he addressed his team. "We've lost too many good people," he said, "but we're still standing. We've shown them that they can't just take what they want. Earth isn't theirs for the taking." The soldiers nodded, their faces a mixture of exhaustion and determination. They had fought for so long for so many, and now it was over. For the moment, anyway. The council might be beaten, but Ryan knew better than anyone that the war was far from over. The galaxy had seen the humans' victory, but what would the council do next? Would they regroup and come back for revenge? But for now, Earth was free. They had their moment of triumph. Meanwhile, across the galaxy, the remaining council leaders were reeling from the loss. The shame was unbearable. They had underestimated humanity from the very beginning, and now their empire was in ruins because of it. Zorvax, standing in the wreckage of his flagship, finally acknowledged the truth. The humans were no longer weak. They were a force in the galaxy, and they were not to be ignored. "Prepare to retreat," he ordered, his voice cold with a mixture of anger and regret. "Earth may have won this battle, but the war is far from over." It was a bitter pill to swallow. The Council had always believed in its invincibility. The idea that a primitive species could defeat them was unthinkable, and yet here they were. Earth had turned the tables in a way no one had imagined, and the consequences were now clear. The humans had proven that, no matter how strong the enemy might seem, nothing could break the spirit of those who fought for their home. As Zorvax ordered his remaining forces to retreat, the Council's once proud fleet disappeared into the darkness of space, leaving Earth behind, battered but not broken. The message was clear to anyone who had been watching. Earth had fought back, and Earth had won. Back on Earth, celebrations were held in every city, from the ruins of Washington, D.C., to the scorched streets of London and the battered walls of Beijing. People who had once been terrified now held their heads high. They had stood against the might of the galaxy's most powerful empire and emerged victorious. The aliens who had once looked down on them, who had thought they were nothing more than an insignificant species, now saw what humanity was capable of. The war was over for now, but the humans knew that peace was fragile, that the Council would regroup, that they might return someday. The humans had shown the galaxy their strength, their courage, and their defiance. They had earned their victory, and they would stand ready to protect their world again, no matter the cost. And as the last of the alien ships disappeared into the stars, humanity stood tall, knowing that they had forever changed the balance of power in the galaxy. The Council had fallen, and Earth had risen. It was only the beginning. The galaxy was still stunned by Earth's victory. News spread across every star system, rippling through the vast reaches of space like a shockwave. The mighty Galactic Council, whose fleets had conquered dozens of planets, whose word was law across countless worlds, had been defeated. A primitive species, one that couldn't even travel faster than light just a few decades ago, had stood up and crushed them. The humans had done the impossible. But while the Council retreated, licking its wounds and swearing revenge, the people of Earth weren't celebrating for long. The victory had come at a heavy price. Too many lives lost, too much destruction, too many broken cities. For the people who had fought and survived, the question was not just how they had won, but whether they could keep this victory. The aliens might have been beaten, but they would be back. Zorvax and the other council leaders had vowed to return, and the humans knew better than anyone that such promises weren't made lightly. Sergeant Ryan stood in the wreckage of what had been the heart of Washington, D.C. His face was grim, the weight of the battle settling deep in his bones. He looked out at the city, at the ruins around him, and wondered how they could possibly rebuild. The war had left Earth scarred, and the future was uncertain. But one thing was clear: Earth would not bow to anyone again. The resistance had fought and bled, had sacrificed everything to push the council back. And now, for the first time, Ryan felt the deep, aching pride of victory, mixed with a sense of foreboding. The council wasn't finished, not by a long shot. "We've got one shot left," Ryan said, turning to the small group of soldiers who had stood beside him through it all. "The council's leaders think they can regroup, rebuild, and come back stronger. We've got to make sure they know that Earth will never be an easy target again." His voice was hard, but there was no hint of fear. The humans had proven that they could fight, that they could take on the most powerful empire in the galaxy. And now they had to send a message, one that would echo through the stars. "We're going to hit them where it hurts," Ryan said, his eyes steely with determination. "Not just the fleets, the Council's pride, their heart." The plan was risky. It had to be. Earth had no fleet left to speak of, no advanced weapons to rival what the Council still had. But what they did have was something stronger, the element of surprise and the will to win. The Resistance gathered its remaining forces, whatever ships and fighters they could cobble together from the wreckage of their war-torn world. They didn't have much, but they had one more chance to make sure the Council knew Earth would never be conquered again. They would attack the heart of the Council's power, a stronghold deep within Council-controlled space, the very place where their leaders operated, their command center, where Zorvax and his counselors would be planning their next move. It was a suicide mission, but for Ryan and the others there was no choice. If they didn't strike now, Earth would always be a target. The Council would regroup, rebuild, and come back stronger. It had to end here. With a sense of unity that had been forged through months of hardship, the last remnants of humanity's fleet launched into the stars, heading toward the Council's stronghold. They had one shot, one chance to stop this before it began again. The pressure was unbearable, but they didn't hesitate. As the humans closed in on the heart of the Council's empire, the atmosphere was tense. Ryan stood at the front of the command deck, his gaze fixed on the distant star system ahead. This was it. There would be no turning back. And then the battle began. The Council's defenses were immense, warships larger than anything the humans had ever seen, armed with weapons that could shatter entire planets. But the humans didn't try to face them head-on. Instead, they did what they had always done best. They used their cunning. Their fleet scattered, launching decoy ships that confused and distracted the alien forces. They fought not with overwhelming firepower, but with speed and strategy, hitting the Council's forces where they were weakest. Zorvax, now fully aware of the humans' tactics, raged as his fleet was torn apart. "How are they doing this? They shouldn't be able to fight like this," he shouted. But the humans had learned. They knew how the Council fought, and they used that knowledge to their advantage. They didn't fight by the Council's rules. They fought with desperation. They fought for the future of their world. For hours the battle raged. Explosions rocked the stars, and both sides took heavy losses. But as the humans pressed forward, they began to close in on the Council's heart. Zorvax's flagship, the vast Empire, was heavily damaged, its once pristine surface now scarred and smoking. The Council's command center, hidden deep within an asteroid field, was the final target. If the humans could reach it, they could end the war for good. In the final push, Ryan's ship led the charge. His team fought with everything they had left, knowing that this was the last chance to save Earth, to save everything they loved. The vast empire fired its devastating cannons, but the humans dodged and weaved, using their small, nimble ships to avoid destruction. And then, with a final, decisive strike, the humans breached the Council's stronghold. The command center, the symbol of the Council's arrogance and pride, was destroyed in a fiery explosion that lit up the galaxy. The leadership of the Galactic Council was obliterated in an instant. Zorvax, the leader who had once believed his empire was invincible, was gone. The galaxy watched in stunned silence as the last remnants of the Council's forces began to retreat. Earth had not just won the battle, had dealt a crushing blow to the very heart of the Council's power. There would be no more invasions, no more attempts at conquest. The humans had sent a message across the stars. Earth would not be conquered. Earth would never kneel. As the human fleet returned to Earth, battered and broken but victorious, the planet below erupted in celebration. The war had taken everything, but it had also given them something far more valuable, a future they would protect at all costs. Ryan stood on the command deck looking out at the stars. The battle was over. The Council was gone, and Earth, for the first time in history, was truly free. The galaxy had underestimated humanity, But the humans had just proven that they would never be silenced. They had fought for their world, for their future, and they had won. And nothing would ever take that away. The galaxy had never seen anything like this. The Galactic Council, once the proud rulers of countless worlds, lay broken. Their vast empire, built over millennia of conquest and oppression, had crumbled in the face of humanity's defiance. Earth, a small, seemingly insignificant planet on the far edge of the galaxy, had risen up against them, and against all odds the humans had won. Zorvax, the once feared leader of the Council's military forces, sat in the ruins of what had once been his flagship, the vast empire. His eyes, cold and unblinking, stared at the dark expanse of space outside his shattered window. The destruction of the Council's command center had sent shockwaves through the galaxy. The heart of their power had been obliterated in a single, decisive strike. And now, the remnants of the Council's forces were scattered, leaderless and broken. "How did this happen?" Zorvax muttered to himself, his voice tinged with disbelief. "We were invincible. We controlled the stars. How could they have done this?" For the first time, the once proud and unshakable leader of the Galactic Council felt something he had never felt before: fear. The humans had done more than just defeat their fleets. They had shattered the very foundation of the Council's arrogance. The galaxy had watched as Earth, a planet thought to be weak, had stood up to the Council and proven them wrong. It was not just a military victory, it was a message to the universe. Back on Earth, the people celebrated, but they celebrated cautiously. The victory had come at a cost. Their cities were in ruins, their people broken, but they were free. For the first time, Earth was a place where the people could look to the future, not with fear but with hope. Sergeant Ryan, once just a soldier among many, now stood as a symbol of humanity's strength. He had led his people to victory, against all odds. The war had taken everything from them, but it had also given them something even more valuable: freedom. They had proven to the galaxy that humanity could stand up to the most powerful forces in the universe and come out victorious. As Ryan stood before a gathering of soldiers and civilians, the weight of the moment settled on his shoulders. He had never imagined he would be standing here, leading a world that had just turned the tide in the galaxy. The celebrations echoed around him, but in his heart he knew the truth. The war was over, but the scars remained. The work of rebuilding, of healing, had only just begun. Ryan looked out at the crowd, his voice steady but filled with the raw emotion of what they had accomplished. "We've fought for this moment," he said. "We've lost too much to let it slip away. The Council thought they could take our world, crush our spirit, but they didn't count on us." A cheer rose from the crowd, but it was quiet, solemn. They knew what it had taken to get here. They knew the cost, but they also knew that they had changed everything, that the galaxy would never be the same again. The truth was, the humans had become something more than just survivors. They had become a symbol of defiance, of strength, and of hope. Earth was no longer just a planet to be conquered. It was a beacon to every species in the galaxy that even the smallest of worlds could rise up and take control of its destiny. The Council, scattered and leaderless, was in disarray. Their once unified empire had fractured into factions, each one vying for control of what remained. Some of the Council's leaders had fled, abandoning their people in the wake of their defeat. Others, too humiliated to continue, had vanished into the depths of space. But Zorvax and a handful of loyalists still remained, determined to rebuild, determined to regain the power they had lost. And though the Council had been beaten, their influence still stretched across the galaxy. Earth was free, but the humans knew that freedom was fragile. They couldn't rest on their laurels, not now, not after everything they had lost. Ryan knew that Earth's victory wasn't just a one-time event. It wasn't the end. It was a new beginning. The galaxy would not forget what had happened, and other forces would soon take notice. The war had been won, but the struggle for Earth's place in the galaxy had just begun. "We can never forget what we fought for," Ryan continued, his voice carrying across the gathered crowd. The council may have fallen, but there will be others who will try to fill the void. We've shown them that Earth is not to be trampled on, that we will never back down. And now we make sure that they never forget. It was a warning to anyone who thought of invading Earth, a promise that humanity would stand guard over its world. The humans had proven their strength, and they would not let it slip away. As the last of the alien ships retreated into the stars, leaving Earth behind, a sense of finality hung in the air. The humans had sent a clear message to the galaxy. Earth was not just a planet to be conquered. It was a place of defiance, of strength, and of pride. The Council had underestimated humanity, and now they knew what it felt like to be at the mercy of a force they could not defeat. The final battle was over. Earth had won. But the story didn't end there. For Earth's victory was not just a triumph for one planet. It was a victory for all those who had been oppressed, for all those who had suffered under the rule of the Council. And as the humans celebrated their freedom, they knew that this was only the beginning of their journey. The galaxy had watched as Earth attacked back, and now they knew Earth would never be the same again.